Okay, well, welcome to the Impact Sales Tribe VIP call for February 2nd, 2023. February 2nd. I'm still getting used to realizing we're already in February in 2023, but we've got a great VIP call scheduled for today because today we're going to dig into some of the psychology around why impact focused positioning is so powerful. And we're going to lay this out a little differently. This is another nuance to ISM. This is something that, you know, really lends more to the psychology aspects of human behavior and why they respond the way they do to certain things. But it really all does center around what we covered in ISM, which is all about this idea of impact focused positioning. Okay. And the power of that. So the first thing I think we got to start with is why. Like, why is this, number one, an important topic to understand? Number two, is something so important that we're covering it on this VIP call. But why is impact focused positioning so powerful? Like, what is the secret sauce behind it? So today's first half of this call is going to be all about kind of unpacking that and then describing literally what people go through when they're experiencing this as a buyer. And the idea is to kind of give you guys a sense of the different nuances to how you can utilize this in your own sales process, but also to give you a better understanding of how people look at it and the impact it has on them. And, the why is really important because, there are certain key things that happen when you do this the right way. Just like there are things that don't happen when you don't do it the right way. There are definitely things that happen when you do this the right way. And, some of those things are people feeling much more comfortable with you as a trusted advisor because, you're asking questions, you're going farther than the average person may go. You're creating some things that you may not even realize you're creating. And I know everybody that's been through ISM probably knows it, but for somebody who might be catching this recording or catch this later on at some point, you may not even understand the power behind why impact focused positioning is kind of your best friend. But we're going to go over that today. And we're also going to describe the creation of something that really gives you just this powerful set of ammunition to go back to related to your prospects. And I think you're going to get a lot out of this as we walk through this little process. We'll be able to answer questions for you in a couple of minutes when we're done with it. But I think you guys are really, really going to enjoy this. So along the sense of why, I think we've covered this and I want to make sure we go back and revisit this. But there are really two critical steps that impact focused positioning does for you. Now, if you've not been through Impact Sales Mastery, you may not completely understand what impact focused means. But for everybody on this call today, you probably do. It's all about creating and really invigorating the impact that something has on your prospect or your client. And the most critical step in this process is what we have listed here as the first one, and that's to create emotion. It's to create true emotion in your prospect, to make them think, to make them feel, to make them resonate with what you're discussing with them in a way that's different than other things that they go through. Now, we're going to take just a couple of minutes to unpack that and explain again why creating that emotion is so powerful, because it does lead to other things. But I think it's important that we don't skip over it. We don't just say emotion. I think we need to describe it. We need to dig into specifically why it is as powerful as it is, what it does for both the prospect as well as the sales professional, the person that's using it. But it's not just enough to say creation of emotion is going to get you where you want to go. But I'll tell you, if you lack emotion in the process, if you don't create it with your prospects, you're stacking the deck against yourself. You're really not giving yourself any significant advantage. Just like if you can create emotion in how people look at things, you're stacking the deck in favor of your success. And part of this goes to one of the tried and true things that people have heard me say, and I'm sure you've heard it in many other environments. People buy on emotion. They really do buy on emotion. Even your most analytical, engineering-minded type person, process-driven, whether they admit it or not, whether they acknowledge it or not, emotion plays a role in them making a buying decision. Now, they move forward or validate the buying decision many times based upon logical elements, pricing, terms, conditions, things that just make sense or logical. Even need is sometimes can be defined by logic, but emotion is what really drives the actual momentum towards making a decision. And as a sales professional, you need to all understand that the better you get at creating emotion, the better you get at eliciting that first critical step, the more successful you're going to be. Even if you trip all over yourself in other areas of the sales process, even if you screw up in the way you handle objections, even if you don't close in a powerful way, positioning things the right way, you will still close business if you're really, really good at tapping into emotion. Now, I'm not talking about tapping into it artificially. I'm not talking about doing it in a way that manipulates your prospect. That's the furthest from the truth. What I'm referring to is meeting them on an emotional plane about what's really important with them. And that goes back to those impact focused questions. What is the situation going to look like for them based upon your questions? How will they feel about it? What impact will it have on others? What impact will it have on their business, their family, their life in general, their peace of mind, their health, their well-being? However you define it, they're all emotional categories that your questioning should uncover. One of the biggest ones that people miss in this process is the second critical step. And we talk about this in ISM, but we don't necessarily define it to the nth degree simply because it's different from one business to the next. But the other critical step that you need to do if you really want to be wildly successful with impact-focused positioning is you need to create what I like to call high-ticket multipliers. Now, the multipliers in and of themselves become another element of feeding emotion, but we want to create high-ticket multipliers. Now, you could define this differently. You could define this as ROI. You could define it as just a significant improvement over the current state of where that prospect is. But really the way I want you to start to look at it now is creating high ticket multipliers. And I want to give you an example, and I'm going to write a little bit on the next page so you can kind of understand the power behind why these high ticket multipliers really are your best friend in the sales process. So bear with me here while I play around with my little annotation tool. So let's say you have a product or a service, and let's say your product or service is $10,000, right? That's the cost for somebody to work with you. Doesn't matter what the product is, doesn't matter what the service is, doesn't matter what they get specifically yet. It's a $10,000 ticket price. Now, for people that are out there only selling on straight line features and benefits and not exploring impact, not exploring the other elements of emotion that trigger a buyer, and then finally, definitely not exploring a high ticket multiplier, they are really dealing with this challenge of their prospect looking at the $10,000 as an obstacle. Okay. Now, we all know it really isn't an obstacle. It's really the means to the end to their solution. But to them, because they don't have enough evidence on the other side, they don't have enough emotion connected to it, and they definitely don't have enough high ticket multipliers, initially, if you don't get into those things, they're looking at that $10,000 as a big, big problem. And it doesn't matter whether they have the budget or not. It's just the way the human mind processes things. They look at that and they say obstacle, right? That's what they see. Now, a high ticket multiplier is where through your questioning, through the way that you're interacting with your prospects, you're uncovering other things that they can do, other things that they can get or have or quantify as it relates to working with you. And let's say the first one is something, and again, doesn't matter what it is specifically. Let's just say it's an increase in marketing that allows them to do more business and nets them $50,000. Well, there's a significant difference between $10,000 and $50,000. The reason why the high ticket multiplier is so powerful is because now you're having a conversation, an emotionally charged conversation. I mean, emotionally charged in a good way, not a bad way. Not that you're angry, not that they're angry or upset, just emotional as it relates to it means something to them. That $50,000 conversation is now what they are focusing on. They are not focusing on the 10,000. They are focusing on the 50, but they don't have the 50. This is all conceptual. But when that 50 is identified, and to get to that 50, all it takes for them to be able to have access to it is the $10,000. Now, more than ever, they want the $50,000 benefit, whatever it is. And they realize that the $10,000 investment cost or investment is really an opportunity cost. It's not an obstacle. And the key to a high ticket multiplier is making sure as you look at these things, as you analyze exactly what you're discussing with the prospect, is to get them to talk about it more, to get them to talk about that $50,000 high ticket multiplier, what they get, what it means, how it would change their life, how it would change their business. Make them talk as much as possible about it, because the more they talk, the more they want. The more they express interest in it and quantify it, the more they're going to want to have it in their life, the more they're going to want it to resonate in their reality and not just in the concepts in the back of their mind. So that $50,000 high ticket multiplier, 5 times what their opportunity cost is, again, no longer looking at it as an obstacle. But what if that same situation for your prospect, because you did a great job exploring impact focused positioning, now is 100,000? That high ticket multiplier is 10x what their opportunity cost is. You know, the more you get them talking about that $100,000 benefit that they get, the impact that they get, and the emotion about it, the more they talk about it, the more they look at that $100,000 benefit, the less likely they are to look at that 10,000 as an obstacle. It's an opportunity. The higher up the ladder you go with a high ticket multiplier, the more you get them to talk, the more you get them to quantify what might that mean? What would you do with the money? How would you invest that $150,000 back into your business or into your personal life? What would you do with the money? How would you spend it? The more they verbalize, the more they share, the more they want to see it happen. And the farther away you get in distance from the impact focused positioning, from the actual cost of your product, the more likely you are to close the business. And what I would say is, when you look at this scale, your odds, although the numbers are going up, your odds will increase the larger that number is. The higher you get that impact focused positioning number to be, the higher the high ticket multiplier is, whether it's 10x or 15x or 20x or whatever the number is on the actual cost of your product, the opportunity cost, the greater your likelihood for success. The more likely that you have a chance of getting a deal done. Why? Because the benefits are so much greater than the perceived risk. Now, I'm not saying it's easy to operate in this $50, $100, $150,000 conversation set with these prospects. It takes a lot of work. It takes a lot of mastery. It takes a lot of skill in getting them to verbalize this and talk about it. But once you start doing some of the things we talk about in ISM, once you start making it all about them, talking about what they get out of it, how it impacts their life, their business, their employees, their growth plans, and then you start asking them to quantify those things, the easier it becomes to identify those high ticket multipliers. The easier it becomes for you to recognize where your pressure points are to move them forward. You know, think about it this way. We talk about the power positioning that we use in ISM and how simple it is by positioning it right out of the gate during the initial interaction. And I still, you know, I call it my $200 million close because of how much business it's helped me close over the years. I still think that's the most powerful, but this one's a second, you know, a second in line. If you get really, really good at this, if you find yourself in a position where you're able to easily make adjustments and communicate with people in a way that gives them comfort in seeing that high ticket multiplier, you're going to find that it becomes very easy for you to close business, because the more you talk about that 50,000 and the value it brings, that 100,000, the value it brings, and the 150,000 or whatever the number is, the greater they're going to want it, the more they're going to want to experience it, the more they're going to want to have it in their reality. And if the only obstacle that they have is so small compared to what they actually get, people will move mountains to figure out how to do it. People will discuss and figure out how to make it happen. They don't see the obstacle, they see the opportunity, and they start getting creative. They start figuring out ways of doing it. Now, along those lines, I want you to recognize something as well. I don't want you to think on a linear path, one way into a direct new client. I want you to realize that every single one of your existing clients as well are positioned for a conversation like this. If you're trying to do more business with a particular prospect or client and you're really stuck on how to kind of get them off the fence, start engaging them this way. Start looking at what it might cost for them to do it. And instead of allowing them to put up that wall of objection, start talking about that high ticket multiplier, what it would really mean. An extra 50,000, an extra 100,000, an extra 150,000, and ask them what they would do with the money. You know, say something to them like this, like, you know, we've been working together for a while, and one of the things I've been evaluating is I've recognized some ways to add significant bottom line value to what it is that you guys are doing, and more particularly to your business. Would you be open to a conversation where we kind of explore that? And then once you start talking with them, start digging into those impact focused questions, start getting onto the scale of those multipliers. And as long as that multiplier is a significant improvement in what the opportunity cost is to make it happen, you're going to be in a really, really good position to be able to win that business. In fact, if you're already a trusted advisor of theirs, if you're already a client of theirs, the likelihood of you winning that business and upselling them is very, very high when you take this approach. It's not just for new clients, it's for any client, any situation that you're working with. Perhaps it's also the value proposition in how you win back business. If you've lost somebody and maybe somebody didn't do the right job initially in the impact focused positioning, but later on you have an opportunity to get back in front of that person and you do it the right way, it could lead to winning back that client that you lost, that client that you wish you didn't lose, but now are in a position that you have to kind of come after them in a different way. So this is the power behind what I like to call, hold on a second. Sorry, got to turn the annotation off. The 20 critical or the 2 critical steps. Why is it so important? Because they work together. They work in conjunction with each other in a way that, when done the right way, truly can become extremely, extremely powerful for you. But don't put yourself in a position where you only do one or the other. Don't put yourself in a position where you talk about the emotion, but you don't quantify it. You don't get into those high ticket multipliers. Now, this is so critical because just because somebody feels something emotionally, if you don't qualify it, you run the risk of them not logically justifying it. So you could be a rock star on getting them to emotionally feel how important certain things are and why they need to do this and why it would add value and why their employees would be happier and why their home life would be better. And you could just run down the whole list. But then if you don't quantify it and truly assign what we call a high ticket multiplier to it, you're going to find that that person, when they go to rationalize that, will not see the logic in it. They won't see the logic in, well, spending $10,000 to get a $50,000 or $100,000 or $150,000 return. I'd do that deal all day long. You know, whole industries are predicated upon that. You know, the marketing industry, social media marketing industry, ad spend, you know, all predicated upon getting a certain ROI on the dollars spent. Well, why shouldn't everything be positioned that way? It can when done the right way. And just like anything else, it's not just what you do that matters. It's how you do it, how effective you are at doing it. But these 2 critical steps really, really need to be done together. You really need to just drill down on the emotion, and you definitely, absolutely need to quantify it. We talk about quantifying it in ISM, but the high ticket multiplier concept is something that if you can really master that, it becomes easy for people to make high ticket decisions related to what it is that you may offer. If you are in a situation where your particular offering, you don't feel it necessarily justifies more of a higher ticket price, or maybe you're asking yourself the question, should I increase my prices? Should my prices be higher? How could I justify charging more? Whatever the rationale is, if you find yourself in that particular situation, I will tell you the answer lies in these 2 critical steps. It lies in, if you get really good at creating emotion and you get really good at highlighting and creating high ticket multipliers, what you charge is no longer the big part of the conversation. You may think it is going in. You may wonder, are people going to pay that? You may wonder, will the market stand for this? Will the market accept something like this? And I will tell you, if you look around and you take a look at what other people do in your industries, it doesn't matter what your industry is. If you look at what other people do, there are always people that you look at what they do, they charge a massive premium for it. And you have to wonder, how do they do it? Now, of course, they deliver higher levels of value, but where does that value come from? Does it really come based in reality of what they deliver? Or is it more in how they position it? And then they deliver something that's very, very close, right? That's very, very close. It does it. And the answer is, it's not always as strong, but it's close enough that nobody ever questions it because it's so massive of an improvement that they are thrilled with the decision that they made. And these are realities that we all face as it relates to moving our business forward. So whether you are struggling with positioning impact-focused questions and the impact itself the right way, or whether you're struggling on creating enough return on investment for your prospects and clients, I encourage you to go back and listen to this recording and replace the steps in your own head about your interactions. Are you having conversations that justify a 5x, 10x, or 15x ROI on the cost of your services? Because if you're not, you're probably not having the right type conversation. It's probably not hitting these two critical steps. If you are, I encourage you to stick with it and drill down and keep perfecting your craft in those two areas, because without question, if you do them well, it will help a lot of other things move forward. I shared with you a couple of minutes ago that you'll probably close business even if you screw other things up, simply because you do these things quite well. So that was what I wanted to cover in today's VIP. I'm going to open things up for questions. It can be related specifically to impact focused positioning or any other topic. Who's got a question for me today?
Hi, it's Susie. I have a
Hey,
question.
Susie, how are you?
Good. So my challenge comes in two different two different challenges I have with this. And one skews male and one skews female.
Uh-huh.
With the male executives, when I go into this, a lot of times their response is, "Oh, I can do it without you." Like, they don't say that to me,
Mm-hmm.
but when we come to the end of the phone call, they're like, "Oh, well, I can get those numbers without you. I know lots of people and I'm networked and I can do this without you. There's no problem there. I'm not sure I need this help because I know I can get there myself." That's
Sure.
male. The women get very nervous about it. And they start to say, I don't think I could get that high. Even with your help, I don't think I could get that high. There's no way. I'm in a position now and I'm being paid enough. It's fine, but I don't think I could do better. I'm not sure I could move on to the next opportunity. It's like self-doubt.
Mm-hmm.
So two different perspectives, but both of them are hesitant when it comes to talking about those numbers.
Sure. Well,
So
and that's a great point, Susie, because sometimes you do have to alter how you handle situations based upon your audience, right? So, I think there's a number of things in play. I think people use, I could do that myself sometimes as a standard objection to a lot of things. Like I basically implying I don't need you. Now that ultimately could be generated from a sense of ego or pride. It could be a unwillingness to spend money on something that they feel that they could replicate for themselves. And I would always come back with some real life example or something that's just in your face to remind them that the fact is anybody can do anything in this world. But the fact is, are you the most qualified person to be doing it? Like, I could perform brain surgery. I don't have any doubt about that I could perform brain surgery, but you won't like the outcome. You won't like the fallout, and it'll get a little messy. It'll get a little bloody. Like, you have to phrase things in a way sometimes that make people go, maybe I'm not the best qualified to do it. Maybe the other element is the time. Like, well, obviously you're very accomplished. You've done a lot. Your time is extremely valuable. Wouldn't you rather have somebody who has mastered the art of doing this efficiently in a time effective way? Wouldn't you rather have them handle it? Because that way your time, which is extremely valuable, could be focused on doing something else. The rationale about, somebody can do anything. Like I could hang drywall if I wanted to, but I'd rather spend money with somebody else to do it right and take my time and spend it doing something else. So I think that's a way you can handle certainly certain male personality types. I think with women, and not giving away any secrets here, but I think with women, there are a different set of challenges as well as some perceived obstacles and limitations, right? Some believe that the glass ceiling is real. Others believe that it's a fallacy. And if you do what you need to do, you'll crash right through it. You never know who you're dealing with until you talk to them. But there is one universal truth about women in particularly, and it's even more so than men, believe it or not. The sense of accomplishment is deeply rooted, whether it's, I want to prove people wrong. I want to be the best in my industry, whatever it is. I want to beat out the guys, because in so many industries, women historically have not taken the lead in many of those industries. Now, obviously, there's many that they do. But what I'm saying is you tap into a certain set a different way. If their challenge is a sense of achievement, well, let me help you achieve what so many other people have achieved with my help. Or I specialize in helping people that achieve more, but haven't received the recognition for it yet because they're not in the right role. Like, you have to adjust sometimes your message to power position a certain type prospect. And one way or the other, people justify things a lot of different ways. Maybe it's money and salary as a form of pride and accomplishment. Maybe it's title. Maybe it's, I just need to know I'm helping people. I don't care what I'm called. I don't care what I earn. It's more important to me that I'm making an impact on people's lives. Like, the sooner you figure that out in your interaction, Susie, the more you know what you need to follow up with. Does that make sense?
Yeah, definitely does. Thank you.
And I hope you recognize in all of that, in all of those instances, these two critical steps play a role. Doesn't matter who they are.
Well, yes. And also getting all of the impact information up front it makes it much easier to address their specific needs for the next step. So, I mean, I know I have all that emotional information first that helps me to address their multiplier. It helps me to help them get a higher salary and see the multiplier effect. That helps me. I'm just saying that, yeah, that's why I asked about those specific challenges, because I work with them on it using the emotional component and the impact questions. I just wanted additional information. So thank you. Thank you.
No problem. My pleasure. I think that's a great question, Susie, because people face that in a variety of different industries, and you have to sometimes alter your message. And remember to do it. Not all prospects are the same.
Right. Got it. Thank you.
You're welcome. What other questions do you guys have for me?
Hey, Joe, it's David. How you doing?
Hey, David. How are you?
Doing well. Thank you. So I get this concept of high ticket multipliers, but I don't deal in numbers per se, in dollar amounts. Based on the nature of what I do. I'm dealing with a person's health and well-being. But I take what you're saying, for me to be, the more I get them to talk about the end result, the value of being healthier, the better it is. But one thing, and I ask them, what would you do with the better found health? If you had more energy, how would that affect you and your kids, because there's a lot of times, so based on the information people are getting me. I think I just realized in listening to this, one of the biggest problems I have is sometimes with people who have a hard time imagining what better health would actually look like for them. And anytime I get into a place where I'm leading the witness, it doesn't usually go well. When people can open up and they can talk and they can share. And they can, and they know it's like, well, I have 3 kids. If I had better energy, my life would be so much easier because of this. And, then we can have these really amazing conversations, and those almost always turn into a client. But with the unimaginative types, and where I'm leading the witnesses, don't usually typically translate into a client. Any advice for having these kinds of conversations where I can't put a dollar amount on it and when they're just unimaginative or they're just, they've been defeated so many other times in this area. that, they just can't think beyond, next week.
Sure. So that's a great question, because there are industries such as yours that does require you to alter the approach a little bit. Now, the high ticket multiplier in that instance is not going to be money, but it is going to be something that you can utilize, which is actually more important than money, which is time. And how I would go about doing it is asking them some very important questions. Things like, what are the things in your life right now that you can't do because of your health, whether you're not able to, or just, physically you can't handle it, or whatever it is, and get them talking that way. And then when they say, here are the things I'd like to be able to do. And then you say, great. Well, if we were able to accomplish that working together and you could do those things, what would an extra 10 years on your life mean? What would that look like? And then get them telling you, oh my gosh, I would get to see my kids graduate college. I would, because in some cases they don't realize it. In some cases they do. It might even be life or death. Like, they may not even be around to see these things, let alone experience them. For a lot of the people
I work with.
Yeah. So the first would be like, what would you get out of it? Like, what would 10 years look like? What would 15 years look like? If you were in great health and we were working together for 30 years, what would all the things look like that you would have the opportunity to experience? Like, what are the things right now that you're afraid you'll never experience? Because I tell you what, if somebody has serious health issues, or even ones that they know are lingering that could get worse, they're starting to accept the concessions that they're making in their life, maybe personally on a health basis, but also on an emotional and family basis. They're realizing, I may not be around 20 years. I may not be here for that. Anybody that gets to a certain age starts asking yourself those questions. And the fact is, if it's something that's controllable for a smaller amount of money and some commitment, to be able to have a much greater chance of experiencing those things, that's your high ticket multiplier, David.
Yeah. That's what would an extra 10 years of your life? That's amazing.
Yeah.
And that just like an extra, not just 10 years, but 10 quality years.
Yeah. Absolutely. And look, everybody's got their own thing, and everybody ages, everybody has life impact them, but it's not the dollar amount that drives it. The dollar amount helps justify it, no doubt, but it's the emotional connection to the dollar amount and what it means that drives it. So whether it's a dollar amount or whether it's a time factor, whatever that is, that's what you tap into, and it may be none of those things. It may just be, maybe that person's a doctor and that doctor's not in good shape. I know that happens a lot. And that doctor's saving lives, but they can't save their own. Like, how many lives are you going to save if you live an extra 15 years? Like, if that was the most important thing to them, helping people, maybe that'll make them go, I need to be around to do this. Like, you need to, emotionally connect to that. Like, I think the biggest challenge that people have with selling is that discomfort, or in some cases, unwillingness to discuss emotional things with people. Like, that's the biggest barrier. It really is. It's being, connecting that way in a real way, and having an honest and frank conversation about stuff that makes them a little uncomfortable. Most people are afraid of that. And you have to break through that to really get to what means the most. But once you do, it doesn't matter whether you're using money or whether you're using time or some other factor that you can quantify. It has to be connected to emotion. It has to mean something, and it has to be quantifiable so they can justify it later. But that's a great question, David, because it isn't always money. It could very well be, time. Like, I'll share, for myself, just as an example. Like, I don't look at money as a driving factor in my life. I look at experiences, I look at relationships, and I look at life events that I'm going to have happen. And that to me is worth more than any amount of money. So money can justify it, money can create it, money can do all that, but the emotion connection to it is, what can it do? What will it provide? How many people could we help? You know, what would life look like after those things? So, and I told you guys right away, and I didn't even know what questions were going to be asked, but I knew this is going to be psychological, right? Like all this stuff is psychology. But if you stay focused on emotion and focused on creating some form of a high ticket multiplier, whatever that gap is, it will be enough to help you win business.
That's fantastic. Thank you.
You're welcome. You're welcome. I always like to shoot for fantastic. Every once in a while I get there. Most of the time it's just, that's okay. That's good. But I like fantastic too.
Well, check it off for today.
There's a lot. Look, you know, one of the things that we talk about a lot, we don't, yeah, you know, there's only so much you can put into a course like ISM, right? There's just so many nuances. And, you know, it's really, really important that we explore other elements to kind of add even more substance to things. And this is one of those elements that does that. It's also, and this is the underlying tone to this, which I love as well. It's also where the rewarding feeling comes when you're helping people. Like when you connect with people emotionally and you show them this massive high ticket multiplier on whatever it is that they're getting, time or money, and you accomplish it for them, the sense of accomplishment is much greater. It just is. It makes you feel better, right? So that's kind of the other power behind this. Okay, so what other questions do we have today? Anything else on there? Next week, we have another little, we'll call it another additional layer coming that I think you guys will love as well. Make sure, definitely, you want to make sure you're here for next week's VIP live if you can. It's going to be a good one, fast paced with a lot of stuff. But I can answer any questions in the meantime today that you guys might need some help with. Quiet
You're too
bunch
good
today.
at answering questions.
What was that?
You're too good at answering questions. When you're answering Susie's question, I had 2 questions answered listening to her question. So
I have to get better at creating more questions. Okay, I can do that. I think too, and this is one of these elements that I've learned in coaching a lot of people too. The questions usually come as a direct correlation to the degree of deployment of the things you're talking about. Like the more you use these things, the more you deploy them, the more questions come up while you're going through it. And it's not always easy in a single individual session to think of all the questions you got to ask. So, you know, what I would add for everybody in our VIP group is whatever questions you may have, you know, you don't have to wait till the VIP call, but if you uncover or encounter questions throughout the week in between, shoot them to me in advance and we'll build them into the call and we'll get you the answers sooner. We're not going to make you wait a week to get the answer, but we'll build those things into the call as well. So it creates kind of like a shared learning experience for the rest of the group. Cause you know, we don't get a ton of people on here live each week, but we do get a lot of people that listen to the recordings, and we do get people that catch them, the ones that I post on YouTube, and they get a lot of value from them. So don't think that you can't ask any other question, that we'll make sure we get covered, and we'll share it so people are picking it up as they go. Okay. Well, I'll offer up one more time, one last call if there's any questions. If not, we can wrap up early. Is there anything else that you guys would like to go over? Okay. Well, I appreciate you guys being here for the VIP call. We are going to continue to do these weekly, sharing the content, sharing the information. Make sure, if you have people that are interested in learning more, I have no problem at all with them being a fly on the wall on one of our VIP calls. So if you want to invite somebody to a VIP call to let them experience that and then talk to them about ISM, we can absolutely do that. In fact, I'll send an email out to everybody reminding them of that. I have no problem at all with somebody sitting into the VIP call so they get a sense of kind of some of the things we're talking about. There's a lot of information out there, and I think people need to sometimes see and get the feel for that information being actionable. So just go ahead and feel free to invite people, and we will always make sure that we're covering some great content. So you guys have a great week. If you need me, just reach out and I will be in touch with you soon. You guys take care.
Thanks, Joe.